Hello guys, this is Real Recaps. In this video, I will talk about a 2024 American psychological supernatural horror film, Smile 2. Before we start, I hope you will like and subscribe to the channel. The film picks up 6 days after the events of the previous installment. Joel, haunted by the Smile Demon, tracks down the home of 2 drug dealers. As one of the brothers arrives, Joel dons a mask, holds him at gunpoint, and forces him inside. Despite the captive's attempts to intimidate him, Joel pushes him into a room where the other dealer is seated. Joel accuses them of a past crime they committed together, but they mock his threats. In desperation, Joel stabs one of them, hoping this act will free him from the curse. However, the remaining brother retaliates, shooting Joel and wounding him. Joel fires back, killing the second dealer. Joel panics because the curse requires a witness to pass it on, and both potential witnesses are now dead. Suddenly, Joel hears noises from another room and finds a drug buyer cowering and begging for his life. Joel apologizes and leaves, but he is immediately confronted by accomplices of the dealers. He narrowly escapes through a side exit to the street, only to be struck by a car. His body is gruesomely mangled, leaving a bloody trail on the asphalt that eerily resembles a giant smile. Sometime later, in New York, pop star Sky Riley appears on The Drew Barrymore Show. Despite her career success, Sky struggles with substance abuse, alcoholism, and the lingering trauma of a car accident that killed her boyfriend, actor Paul Hudson. During the interview, she announces plans for a new tour, acknowledging her past mistakes and expressing gratitude to her fans and team. Sky reflects on her lowest moments, including tearing out clumps of her own hair, but insists she has regained control of her life. After the show, Sky and her mother, Elizabeth, leave the studio, pausing to greet fans outside. Later, her assistant Joshua shows her the surging ratings from the interview, which boosts her morale. Determined to make her tour a success, Sky throws herself into rehearsals. However, during one session, she experiences sharp back pain. Though the choreographer advises her to take a break, Sky insists on continuing. Later, the pain becomes unbearable, and she turns to painkillers. As she prepares to take some pills, a knock at the door startles her, causing her to drop them down the sink. Elizabeth is at the door, reminding her to rejoin the group. Sky hides her discomfort but later lies about needing rest and sneaks off to meet Louis Fregoli, a former classmate and drug dealer. When she arrives at Louis's apartment, he unexpectedly threatens her with a sword. Sky, frightened, explains that she came for medicine and that he was the one who invited her. Louis, confused, checks her phone and finds his own message, though he doesn't remember sending it. Distressed, he reveals that he feels haunted by something. Sky tries to leave, but Louis begs her to stay, promising to calm down. He goes to retrieve the medicine, leaving Sky alone to notice a TV broadcast about the car accident involving her late boyfriend. Turning off the screen, she calls for Louis, but he doesn't respond. Sky ventures into the bedroom, where a deranged Louis suddenly emerges. He begins choking as though terrified by an invisible force. Despite Sky's attempts to help, Louis suddenly grins unnaturally and picks up a weight plate, violently smashing his own face until he collapses and dies. Horrified, Sky flees the apartment and returns home, shaken. Trying to calm herself, she combs her hair but yanks out another clump. The act gives her a fleeting sense of control. Exhausted, she lies down, but fear soon jolts her awake. She notices the bloody figure of Louis standing nearby, but when she turns on the light, the vision disappears. The next day, Sky resumes preparations for her tour, attempting to block out the horrifying events. She has a fan meeting scheduled and, as her makeup is done, her mother mentions her estranged best friend, Gemma, whom Sky has avoided since the accident. Joshua also offers advice, which irritates her. During the fan meeting, a longtime admirer, Darius, requests her participation in a charity event for troubled teens. Sky feigns interest but remains indifferent. Later, during a photo shoot, she hesitates over contacting Gemma, opening her number but failing to make the call. Suddenly, Sky feels as if someone is watching her. She looks into the mirror and is horrified to see Lewis's bloody reflection behind her. His hands reach out, stretching her lips into a sinister smile. Sky screams and flails, but when she looks again, only her reflection remains. As her mother, Joshua, and a costumer rush in to check on her, Sky blames her outburst on dissatisfaction with the costume. That evening, Sky rehearses on stage and later signs autographs for fans. One fan, Alfredo, behaves aggressively, declaring he wants to peel off her skin. Security removes him, leaving Sky unnerved. Back at the fan meeting, a young girl approaches her silently, smiling unnervingly. Sky tries to engage her, even signing her shirt, but the girl walks away without a word, leaving Sky deeply unsettled. Later, Sky receives an anonymous text referencing her visit to Lewis's apartment. Terrified, she pulls out another clump of her hair and finally calls Gemma, leaving a heartfelt voicemail apology. Gemma immediately calls back, and Sky invites her over, desperate for some semblance of normalcy. While waiting for Gemma to arrive, Sky sits at her piano and begins singing. Suddenly, she hears the sound of shattering glass. Looking around, she notices a broken water bottle on the floor. As she retrieves a mop, she stumbles upon Alfredo's belongings, including the signed t-shirt and stained underwear, scattered across the hallway. Alarmed, Sky believes Alfredo is lurking in the shadows, ready to attack her. Panicked, she rushes to the door just as Gemma arrives. However, Gemma seems puzzled, as there's no sign of Alfredo or the broken water bottle. Instead, the bottle sits intact on the table. Sky hugs Gemma and is surprised when her friend mentions she had called an hour earlier. Reaching for the bottle to calm herself, Sky reassures Gemma it's part of her therapist's advice to ground herself. She apologizes for her past mistakes and confides in Gemma about the horrifying incident with Lewis. Sympathetic, Gemma agrees to stay the night. That night, Sky has a vivid nightmare. She sees herself trapped in the wreckage of the car accident, her face bloodied and her leg broken. Her boyfriend Paul's lifeless body lies beside her as she cries out for help. Sky wakes up in bed, shaken. She shares with Gemma that she had felt an internal darkness long before the accident. Gemma, to Sky's horror, suddenly accuses her of being a terrible person. When Sky calls out to her, Gemma responds with a demonic smile. A car horn blares, jolting Sky awake. She hears Gemma's cheerful voice from the other room, claiming she's already up and making breakfast. Still disoriented, Sky realizes she's late for rehearsal. Her mother Elizabeth bursts in, scolding her for her tardiness. Rushing to get ready, Sky joins her mother and heads to the studio. There, she apologizes to the team before stepping onto the stage. As they perform, Sky is suddenly haunted by Paul's image. She feels an intense pain in her leg and collapses, accusing one of the dancers of causing her fall. However, the choreographer assures her that nothing unusual happened. Enraged, Sky retreats to her dressing room, only to find it completely trashed. She accuses Joshua of sabotaging her, but Elizabeth points out that Joshua has been with her the entire day. A heated argument ensues, with Elizabeth reminding Sky of how much they've sacrificed to support her since the accident. Feeling alienated, Sky starts to question her own behavior. That evening, she attends Darius' charity event. While waiting backstage, she receives another anonymous message about her visit to Lewis's apartment. Nervously smudging her lipstick, she steps out to deliver a speech. As she reads from the teleprompter, the text abruptly cuts off. Sky improvises, turning her speech into a personal monologue about her struggles with addiction. Midway through, she inexplicably invites Paul Hudson to the stage, shocking the audience. She sees Paul smiling and approaching her from the crowd. Terrified, she yells at him to stop smiling. Mistaking an elderly woman nearby for Paul, she shoves her off the stage, horrifying everyone. Overwhelmed, Skye flees the scene. Back home, Skye continues receiving messages from the unknown sender. The stranger claims to understand her experiences and shares a video of Lewis's encounter with the demonic entity. He invites her to meet in public, and Skye, disguised in a plain jacket, agrees. At a cafe, she meets Morris, a man who explains his brother also fell victim to the creature, which led him to tear his own jaw apart. Morris has studied the entity's patterns and determined it's a parasitic force that only leaves its host upon death. To escape it, he proposes stopping her heart temporarily. As a medic, he offers to revive her after the demon exits. Horrified, Skye rejects the idea and leaves. Fans in the cafe recognize her, trying to take pictures and praise her for her heroic act with the elderly woman. Panicked, Skye flees home. Desperate for relief, she searches for substances or alcohol but finds none. In her frustration, she rips out a chunk of her hair and destroys her apartment. Soon after, she hallucinates her dancers smiling eerily as they corner her, attack her, and tear out her hair. One even forces his hand down her throat, causing her to lose consciousness. Skye recalls the night of the accident, realizing she and Paul were intoxicated, and she was at fault for the crash. She wakes up in a hospital where doctors examine her after finding her unconscious. Begging Elizabeth to cancel the tour, she's met with resistance. Her mother insists that canceling would end her career and lead to financial ruin. Angry, Skye accuses Elizabeth of prioritizing money over her well-being. Suddenly, the entity appears as Elizabeth, and she shatters a mirror, injures herself, and gouges out her eye. Terrified, Skye runs for the door but finds herself covered in blood, holding a shard of glass. She sees her mother lying dead. Skye tries to flee but Joshua notices the blood and alerts security. Panicking, Skye grabs a guard's gun and escapes. Outside, she encounters Gemma and forces her driver at gunpoint to surrender the car with Gemma insists on driving. On the way to Morris, the real Gemma calls, revealing that the demon has been impersonating her. Skye screams in defiance, vowing not to let the entity control her, and she suddenly finds herself at the wheel of her own car. Skye eventually meets Morris at an abandoned pizzeria to perform the heart-stopping experiment. Morris prepares her for the procedure, placing her on a table and explaining the timing of the injections. As the process begins, the entity appears as a monstrous version of Skye on the night of the accident. It attacks her, stretching her lips into a sinister smile. Skye fights back, injecting herself with a syringe, but the entity mocks her, declaring none of it is real. In an instant, Skye finds herself back on stage. She sees Elizabeth, Joshua, and Darius in the crowd as the monstrous entity emerges from her body and crawls into her mouth. Skye collapses, then rises with a grotesque smile. She grabs a microphone and begins smashing her own head, horrifying the audience as she breaks her eye socket. Her fans watch in terror as the nightmare unfolds. The end. Thanks for watching.